tour through, actually. So it was a kind of an amusing presentation from Hunter. But all up, you know, I think we spoke for maybe an hour, and then we had an extra hour of kind of networking and events and and drinks and a few nibbles. Yeah, so it was good. Have I missed anything, Ewan? Ewan had his coffee machine running from his car.
Yeah, very good low, wasn't it? Yeah.
It wasn't my car, it was Captain Basics.
Right.
Yeah. Is that NT4?
Yep.
Yeah. That's right.
That worked well.
So the other thing that is probably worth talking about, but I'm not sure we've got anyone from Alice on the line at the moment, but I know our colleagues in Alice Springs had a fundraiser at Bunnings recently. I don't know the outcome of that. I was hoping that we might have had a participant from Alice to talk about that. I just want to touch on a couple of other things as well. I got an email today from, and Joe would have got one as well, from Chris Jones, who's the national president of AEVA. So he was talking to, I can't remember the name of that organisation, Joe, can you remember? Is that the one that Chris was talking to? About he's looking for any AEVA members nationally who've got experience with and have done an installation of not so much vehicle to load, but vehicle to home or vehicle to grid. And I haven't done it. I want to do it, but I haven't done it.
I know 3 or 4 people in Australia. And also the person to speak to would be Ewan Sternberg from AEVA. He's the vehicle grid person.
Okay.
And so the Australian Capital Territory government ended up running a project where they ended up getting a whole load of wallbox Quasar 2s and their fleet of Nissan Leaf 40 kilowatt-hour ZE1s. They basically plugged into chargers and basically mapped that. And there was a report a couple of years ago when there was a huge incident on the grid, and the ACT, they could show those people stand online in a very, very short instance of stabilise the grid. Weren't the only thing that stabilised the grid, but they can track that these vehicles were involved in that stability event. So,
okay.
So that was the website. Recognition of electric vehicles to the AEVA. Yeah. So the issue with the Quasar is no longer on. It's no longer on the approved list. The DNSPs throughout Australia don't allow vehicle grid yet because they don't have anti-islanding set up yet, so they don't have anti-island. Also, the only vehicles that can do it is one with the channel connections. CCS2 is
the CCS2 with vehicle grid is written.
Yes.
So
It's only the channel connections that have got the software in the vehicle. Yeah, so it's just a matter of updating the software.
So this week's and Outlander.
Yeah.
So there's a winery in South Australia that runs vehicle to grid, and there's a couple of other people. I don't know how they got it.
It runs vehicle to buildings, so it doesn't put out to the grid. It's more limited.
Okay.
That's why they get away with it.
Yep.
And it was approved from the South Australian government as their trial run.
Right.
See how it goes.
I want to talk about quick stuff about the she wants to talk about
The leases.
yeah, just after sandwich maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
biggest issue we've got is the DNSP.
Yeah.
It's not approving. Yeah, so we're in the quiet little seats, we have to hold it all.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get it through. Yeah, it's electric companies all up at this point.
So I thought there was something recently where they basically just started accepting it.
Yeah, we're told to pull their heads in, but the issue is, if it comes down, it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
It's the anti-islanding. So when you've got an inverter, because everyone thinks it's no different to just having an inverter. When you've got an inverter's got an anti-islanding process, so when it loses power, it can't feed back out of the grid. When you connect your vehicle in, the issue is you've basically got a sub-circuit that has a vehicle connected to it, and there's no anti-islanding yet to stop the vehicle from feeding that So if there's a storm and the power line outside falls over, there's still a potential that the vehicle can feed from the house down the power line out to where the break is. And whoever's out there gets electrocuted. So until they've got the, we call it anti-islanding, until they've got the anti-islanding figured out. Yeah.
There was a thing, home or something like that, which, there was a guy that.
Hugh Parsons.
Yeah,
He did this South Australia, yeah, he set up home,
yes. Does that provide, or can it just, is it not reliable in its ability to sense?
It's not that it's not reliable, the biggest issue that, so those scenarios in South Australia were set up as a trial run.
Yep.
To start off with, they have what we classify now as a primitive anti-islanding device, which, and that's kind of where they're being a little bit disingenuous with it as well.
That's they, when you say they're being disingenuous.
So jet charge to start off with.
Okay.
Yep, so because we'll, we do a lot of training with and for jet charge when they brought out the Quasar. The issue there was what they weren't telling people is the only way they could get it approved on South Australia is that in the event that the grid fails, the goes down as well. So it won't stand alone.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it will shut down the inverter as well, and that was basic, but that's a very primitive system. So then, Quasar got to the point where they could do that.
Yep.
And that was fine, but then you had the market pushback, so this goes through, the UK and Germany as well, I've just done big studies on it. Two issues they had is, first of all, people don't want their power to go off just because the grid's going down.
Yep.
So that was just a no-go to start off with. The other side of it is people want due compensation for their vehicle. If you're going, so the whole idea of vehicle to home, vehicle to grid, vehicle to building isn't so much the vehicle to building part, that's a whole different issue.
Just checking everybody can hear that
It's
okay
the,
from,
it's the
Neil?
vehicle to grid problem. So the issue with the vehicle to grid problem is, if I'm going to use my electric vehicle to stabilise the grid during peak demand periods, what are you going to give me in return for the use of my vehicle? Yeah, so it's pretty fair. It's you're forking out 100, 150, 200,000 for a vehicle. You want something back. And the current 6 cents per kilowatt hour just doesn't cut it. So then you've got people that don't want to feed back to the grid because they're not getting due compensation. So then the issue they had in the UK when they opened it up to vehicle at home was it turned into a class war. Those people that could afford to get electric vehicles to carry in their house, they weren't paying for the electricity from the grid. It still costs the same amount of money to run the power plants to produce electricity. So those that can't afford electric vehicles pay more for the power to compensate for those that can afford the electric vehicles to be sustained from the grid. So it starts to drive up prices throughout so there's a real dynamic that goes on. It was the same with solar. When solar first came out and they didn't have the STCs, people that could afford to put solar on were saving on power. And those costs then got passed back onto the other consumers, people that couldn't afford to do it. And in the UK, it was the same problem with the EVs. Those that could afford to get the EV to run their house were no longer buying power from the grid, but the grid still has to produce that power. So the unit price just goes up, which means the guy next door that can't buy an electric vehicle pays more for his power to compensate for the fact that the other person's.
That's a shit argument, though.
It's a shit argument, but it's an argument. So whether you like it or not, it's an argument, and it's an argument that resonates quite heavily with politicians, because if you're trying to get for votes, you've got a larger demographic of people that can't afford it than a larger demographic of people that can afford it. Which one are you going to go for? You're going to go for the majority of the votes. So that's where that one comes from. And then the NSPs with the anti-islanding, now that we've gone more to smart meters, we have what we call DRMs now. So now the AEMO and all that can start to control, load restrictions on houses and all that sort of thing, which really kicked Quasar in the guts, because they had just gotten around this whole anti-islanding thing, and then now the government's gone, well, we want to have full control of this thing. And then they had to go back to the drawing board and start going back through there. Because
Neil, sorry, mate, can I pull you up there? I just want, can I finish the intro,
Yeah, sorry.
and then we'll give you the floor when you. All right. So just coming back to this, I will just quickly read. This is the email I got from Chris this morning. Hi all, it's Laura Corrigan from the Climate Media Centre called me this morning. They'll be releasing a report on home battery storage and are looking for any EV owners with experience using V2X. Now, I know many of our members are quite comfortable with V2L and a few have V2H, powering a circuit in the home using a changeover switch and a caravan plug, but I'm not sure if many of our members have ever gone the whole hog with a V2G system. And obviously that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So Chris's plea is if you know of any members in your branch with experience with V2H and V2X, please let me know and I'll put you in touch with Laura. I'll try to ensure that the AEVA community is recognised for our early adopter experience. So Neil, maybe I mean, that was a really interesting discussion. I'm keen to be part of it later on because I really want to actually personally get V2H as soon as I can, but I don't think I can at the moment. But
We'll take that as a meeting in itself. I think that would be fantastic. And it would be nice to go through the standards and find out what the actual issues are. And because I think it's probably one of the big sticking points. I bought a 62 kilowatt hour leaf for the intention of V2G, and that was 2019, I think, and there's been almost no traction since.
yeah, I'm frustrated as well.
It's a common question gets raised.
It's also currently no spending for it. You've got 4771, 4772 which do the inverter. But our battery standards are all about fixed static batteries, not wheel batteries. So that's
All right, let's pick this up in a minute. All right. Okay. Let's open it. Let's open this up proper in a little minute. One other thing that I think is really positive for AEVA, which Chris was pleased to announce recently, was that they've decided to open up free membership to under 25s in order to attract the younger demographic. And hopefully, as they get older and go beyond 25, they stay members and pay up and have the capacity to pay their membership. But I guess it's it's about trying to grab those younger passionate enthusiasts who might not have the financial means to be a member to join the organisation and be part of the community whilst they're under 25.
Maybe we could do something at Charles Darwin University. Because we've got good relationships with the Charles Darwin University now, so we can see if we can get some, young, apprentices that might be interested.
Yeah,
something to think about.
Yeah. So look, that's all I really wanted to cover in the chair's report. Unless, Joe, is there anything essential or important that I've missed that you're aware of?
Oh, there's also something with the one of the people, I think it was one of the directors, Mike Ponker Jr. He wants to do something for the World Solar Challenge. I think he wants to do some sponsorship. So we can talk about it as it go forward. So if anybody interested in because Hunter Murray is going to be supporting that from Darwin to Adelaide. He did that 2023 was. I think he drove a vehicle from Darwin to Adelaide. So it was the 3 Tesla Model 3s going back and forth. So that might be something that people might be interested in doing going forward. There are discussions about having other classes. So I think I've spoken to Chris Selwood. He's interested in having something different to the cruiser class. He's going to open up something like hopefully getting more of these people that OEMs across the world coming to territory and then testing their vehicles out going forward. So it's something that I'm talking to Chris about hopefully going forward. He was the director for the World Solar Challenge, but now he's stepped down, so someone else will be a director now. They're still part of the board anyway, going forward. Yeah, excellent.
We might, working out this conversation about that.
Yeah. So yeah.
So I'm just conscious of the so we've got 3 guest speakers now, I understand. So we've got Sam, And then we've got Linnell, who wants to address the meeting in relation to novated leases for electric vehicles. And then we'll finish off with Neil. And obviously, there's a lot to talk about, I think, with Neil, as we've just demonstrated. So look, without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sam Moyes, who hopefully is going to tell us about BYD in general, but BYD in Darwin, hopefully. Yeah.
Fantastic. Can everyone hear me all right on the on that side of things? In the room? Cool. Wonderful. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I'm just going to share a couple quick slides. Let me know when these come up on your end. Should be there in a second. Is that all coming through all right? Perfect. All right. So I would ask how many of you have heard of BYD a few years ago, but I think a fair few of you by now will have heard of BYD. It is the fastest growing EV brand in the world at the moment, and one of the fastest growing brands, EV or otherwise, in Australia at the moment. It's been pretty phenomenal growth. I've been with BYD a little while before BYD Darwin, which we're going to be launching next week, right there on the highway. As you come into Darwin, it is a fantastic site. I've already visited it myself. Not even 48 hours before the first NT meeting, which I was just with flights, couldn't make it work with the other arrangements I had back in Adelaide back then. But yeah, really, really exciting stuff. But I'll do a quick introduction to me first. I've been with BYD previously, setting up the SA side of things. So I've been a member of AEVA prior to that for about 14 years. So I joined AEVA quite a while ago, back when my grandfather did an electric conversion motorcycle, and I heard that there was some shenanigans going on a bit earlier with electric motorcycles there in the room. So yeah, we've been working on launching BYD Darwin for a little bit now, while I've been down at the RAA working on the RAA charge network, and a variety of things through that, including also sourcing products for home charging, vehicle to grid as well. So we've got some things that I'll just say are under NDA at the moment, but very, very exciting in that space. And I can tell you there are some really, really fun things coming up with all of that, at least in the South Australian DNSP side of things. But I've got some handovers to some power water contacts there that I'll be liaising with hopefully soon. And then, yeah, I've been driving EV only for about 5 years now. I'm in my personal BYD Atto 3 right now. I bought this before I ever worked for BYD. I bought this out of my own pocket. And look, I've done over 140,000 kilometers in it. And it's not missed a beat. So, and prior to that, I had a Nissan Leaf. So I've been in the EV sphere for a little while now. As for the showroom, we'll be opening that on Monday. So many of you will have seen it already there. It is coming along really thick and fast now. Realistically, I'm going to invite every one of you down there at some point for a bit of an opening party sort of event, but I'll get that all organized once we're sort of a bit more settled in, the dust is settled and had some time to really establish the space. We'll also have a full service center, so we're opening that back up out the back. So we will have 2 bays available for servicing, and we will be doing all of your logbook servicing available. I know there's, last I checked, according to VFAX, already 73 BYDs rolling around the NT. So a few of you will be due for your service, I'd say, given that they were delivered back in 2022. So yeah, please, don't be a stranger, reach out. We're going to be opening that really soon, and hopefully going to be getting plenty of you rolling through in your new or existing BYD. But apart from that, I've got a couple of frequently asked questions. BYD approved repairers. We are going to be building relationships in the NT for that, so that will be coming soon. Charging, the short answer is yes, we will have chargers available. How fast is an ongoing negotiation. My previous role at RAA was procuring charging sites and working with the hardware selection for those. So I've got a good relationship with a number of the charger brands out there. And I've already had some really positive words from a number of different charging networks who are interested in partnering with us on that. So very, very excited to bring something there to the site. I can't say much more than that right now, but we will have a really robust charging solution on site. And then there.
Sam, I don't know if you can hear me, but we seem to have lost you. You're frozen. So I don't know if you're driving or you're moving around, but we might have to get you reconnected. He's on mute. Can you unmute him?
He's just frozen, so it's like lost connection.
That's right, he might be starting out something.
Mm. Well, look, Joe, whilst we're waiting for Sam, hopefully to rejoin us, should we invite Linnell to? Oh, is he?
My apologies there. It looks like my internet dropped out there. Ever since the 3G shutdown, I swear my my connectivity has gotten way worse. But really, it was at the end of the presentation anyway. It's an abridged version of what I already presented down here at AEVA SA at the last meeting, wrapping up some of the work I've been working on with the charging network here. That's available to all AEVA members as a nice recorded package as well. I'm actively lobbying, I'll say, the AANT to copy what we've done here down in SA with RAA. Look, it's going to be a fun time for everyone, but I'm really looking forward to meeting each and every one of you across the NT there. So it's really going to be a fun rollout.
Excellent, thanks, Sam. Yeah.
Can you? Well, maybe I'll kick off just while everyone's thinking. Sam, my first question is: are you going to be living up here?
Classic muting. Yes, yeah, I'm actually flying up this Sunday, so it's not long now, and that's a one-way ticket. So.
Well, we'd love you to be part of our AEVA community up here. I'm not sure. Are you part of AEVA down in SA?
Yeah, I have been, as I say, for 14 years. So yeah, I'll definitely be a friendly face. Don't worry.
Good. All right. The second question I had was you talked about I think V2G capability, and but yeah, I think you also talked about an NDA, so you can't really talk about it very much. But is there anything you can, because BYD they do V2L at the moment. That's in their model. But can you tell us can you give us any idea what's coming in terms of?
Yeah. What I can say is I've had hands-on experience with V2X hardware. across a number of different brands, and across a number of different vehicles.
Yeah.
And all I can say at this point is it's probably not as complex as a lot of people are making it out to be. It is quite a simple system to implement once we're off and running with explaining to the DNSPs just what we're doing. It's just that a lot of the DNSPs actually aren't fully understanding. I've had conversations across a few. Can't say much about the content, but I can say that it will be coming sooner rather than later.
So have you implemented a working example of a BYD in a V2H situation?
I can't speak to brands, but I can't speak to much. There's a few different parties involved here, but there is plenty of development and plenty of exciting stuff coming very shortly.
So it's quick, is it? Like what time frame?
I would say months.
Months.
Can you tell us what you're allowed to talk about?
Look, I've done a lot of advanced development stuff down at REA, across a number of different verticals. My SA talk is sort of the sanitized version of what I can give, but yeah, we're looking at a lot of brands and a lot of compatibility and at least 3 different hardware solutions that'll be on market with relevant certification within a reasonable time frame, I'd say.
Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to prying you open, I guess, Sam, when you get up here, maybe.
Look, it's certainly going to be a fun time to be around it all.
Good. And just one other question was, so the servicing capability also piqued my interest. So is it only BYD branded vehicles that you're going to service, or are you entering into any arrangements with any other brands?
Yeah, so at this time it'll just be BYD brand at the moment. Just while we spin up, we're also going to be doing with those service bays a lot of pre-delivery works, getting the cars ready and conditioned, and getting everything sort of ready to roll for when cars get delivered. So a lot of that work already gets done in Adelaide or Cairns, and then cross-shipped across. We'd much prefer to sort of do that in-house, sort of de-risk a lot of the hazards that can be incurred with transport, and then having to re-clean the cars, do all of that. Much nicer to sort of do it in-house and do it once, do it right sort of approach. So we're going to have, with 2 hoists and 73 existing cars on one site, it's going to be a pretty busy site. So I won't commit to much more right now. It's an active conversation though, and something that I'm sure will avail you of when and if there has been a decision made on that.
Right. All right. Look, I'll open it up to the rest of the crew, both here in the room and online. Does anyone else want to fire away?
Yeah, just wondering, is BYD the largest car producer in the world yet?
Did you hear that, Sam?
Largest car producer, I wouldn't say we are the largest car producer full stop, but certainly the largest new energy vehicle producer for sure. If you count all of our buses, trucks, and other electrified vehicles out there, we are certainly, I would say, the largest.
Who's bigger? Is it sort of Ford in the United States and Volkswagen Group in Europe or something?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be able to speak to exact current stats on the state of other OEMs rollouts with across all their vehicles, but certainly there will be other automakers that are probably selling more right now. But BYD has what they call Shenzhen speed, which is basically an ability to scale like you've seen over the past few years here, where just I'll speak to this with, they've just launched their BYD Shark rollout factory coming out of Thailand for us. They make one of those Shark utes every 60 seconds. And that was led as a development, you know, of they'd never made a Ute 4x4 sort of platform before. It's not a very popular sort of segment of the market in the Chinese domestic market, and that vehicle turned around. I was in a meeting not long ago with the COO of operations, and basically for the Australian market, and he come from GM background, like he knows automotive, he knows how vehicles get developed. He said that, look, the concept to rolling production prototype of Shark was about 4 months. That's unheard of anywhere in the automotive industry. So the scale that they are getting to at the speed they're going is just unbelievable. So they might not be the largest brand in the world right now, but I can tell you with the rollout they're doing here in Australia and with the rollout they're doing globally, it's well on track.
Actually, Sam, I just remembered another question. So I read, I think 2 or maybe 3 weeks ago, there seemed to be a media release or a media storm about an announcement from BYD that they had cracked a battery that could, an EV battery that could recharge in, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes or something for 400 Ks. I can't
Yes.
remember what the numbers were, but is there any substance to that?
Yeah, look, there absolutely is substance to it. You know, these are charging rates that are, you know, under certain conditions and with the right equipment available. You know, building a charger capable of delivering those levels of power is a feat. Having experience building chargers, I don't think we'll be seeing probably quite that infrastructure to support that here just yet. I think it's going to be a little down the track.
So it's limited by the external infrastructure, not by the
in
not
large
by
case, a lot of BYD vehicles that are supporting these higher charging speeds are in other markets starting to support dual gun charging. So you can put in 2 different charging guns on either side of the vehicle if you've got 2 bays either side of you, and potentially use that to increase the charging. As someone who has operated a charging network with REA Charge, I don't know how other drivers might feel about that, and that might be the limiting factor on that. But you know, where supported, those are ways around it. But I've got to say, like, we are seeing improvements in the technology all the time, and charging sites are being able to offer.
Is he?
That's Sam Moores from.
Where is he? He's sitting in a car.
He's not in a car.
In a BYD, no less.
Yeah.
I hope you've got a chick in there with you, but I doubt it.
There's
So, yeah.
through. I've just muted him. You might want to. Can you message him and tell him we could hear everything?
All good, all good. I reckon that was Hunter. I could hear. I've worked with Hunter before on supporting the upgrade of Glendambo up to a DC class station. So and Hunter's
Yeah,
been
that
a real
was Hunter.
yeah, real support through a lot of that northern run of the REA Charge network. So yeah.
Just quickly, we've got one more question here.
Yeah.
That's great again. Does BYD have any battery swapping arrangements underway in China? You know, any trials or infrastructure or anything along those lines?
Not to my knowledge. The way I've always perceived battery swap is it does implement a lot of unnecessary complexity into the vehicles and the stations. It's something, as I think we see these faster and faster charging times and the increasing prevalence of what I like to call ubiquitous charging, where, you know, every shopping center, every workplace, every school, every university, hospital, car park has an amount of charging, whether that's full speed 7 kilowatt, whether that's you know, just a 1.4 kilowatt charge, I think it becomes increasingly unnecessary because you're just, every time your car is stopped, it's charging. And for most people, like I've driven my BYD Atto 3 everywhere from Yalata in the far west of South Australia over to Sydney. And you know, for me, like a lot of people talk about the range anxiety they might get, or that sort of thing. For me, it's been more about the bladder anxiety of these things. And so for me, it times in quite well with personally needing to take a rest and when my car needs to take a rest. And so that's where I sort of say, well, you know, there are other influences on how people drive these long distances. And yes, the charging speeds will absolutely improve. But the cost of building one battery swap station, you could build, you know, 4 or 5 traditional fast charging stations like you see in the RAA charge network. And I think people would much rather see that than these complex sites where, you know, then how do you measure things like state of health of your battery? You know, all of these sorts of questions come up that I think just leave a lot more questions than they do answers, quite frankly. But so that's where my personal view. This is not a representation of BYD. This is just me speaking. And so that would be my response.
I've got a quick question. When does it look like the Shark will go fully electric?
Look, I can't speak to that behind the curtain sort of question, but we are constantly revising on our models and bringing new improvements. We're now on our 3rd revision of Atto 3, model year 26, coming hot off the heels of model year 25. We are constantly, as I say, with that Shenzhen speed, bringing more and more improvements out. So look, I wouldn't say it's a never question. I think it's just there are so many things coming thick and fast. It's just something I can't answer because I'm not behind the curtain on that side, but you'll see it when you see it.
All right. Thanks, Sam. And thank you for you know, making the time and the effort to connect with the NT branch, Sam. We do really appreciate that, and we're obviously looking forward to you arriving here.
You'll be seeing me around plenty. So and if you have any questions before the next meeting, feel free to come over to the showroom and have a chat. Happy to sort of show off what we have to bring up. We'll be bringing up a full complement of models shortly, so I reckon we should have something for everyone to have a look at.
Great. Yeah, great. No, we're all looking forward to it. All right, Sam.
I will have to sign off, but
yeah.
Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing each and every one of you very soon.
Great. Thanks very much, Sam. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
All right. So we'll move on to now, Linnell. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but
very well, thank you.
Good. Pleasure to meet you, Linnell. I've heard
thank you, and you
from Joe. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you about novated leasing and electric vehicles, but obviously an introduction as well about
thank you.
Would be great.
Thank you. So my name is Linnell Hill. I'm the NT Relationship Manager for Easi Novated Leasing in Darwin. And thank you, Joe, for giving me this opportunity today to have a quick chat. And if Sam was still on the line, I'd say to him, we are so very much excited that BYD is coming to Darwin. And I think the great thing there is that here in Darwin, we're looking to go electric. We're not quite there. We want to go there, but by having a showroom here in Darwin gives people the opportunity to test drive a vehicle, to do what and see what the capabilities are. And from my experience, the BYD Shark is very much a popular vehicle here in the NT. gives the territory lifestyle with the ute. So when you're there on a weekend and you're picking up all those palm fronds, which we hate to do, we can pop them in the back and we can take them off, and we've got the best of both worlds. But more importantly, I guess I just want to get the message out that with the government exemption with the FBT on electric vehicles, it makes EVs a very, very popular choice to do them on a novated lease. And the reason why is that if you're going to look at testing the waters with an EV, do it through a lease. You can take the advantage of all the tax savings. And when I say all the tax savings, it's all when you purchase a vehicle on an EV, it's all pre-tax savings. So you're looking at the running costs of your vehicle plus the purchase price of your vehicle, tax-free and GST-free. Gives you a great opportunity to test them out. And I know we hate to say it, there's a lot of word around with EVs and the batteries and what's that going to mean for me if I buy one outright. On a novated lease, you're getting advantage of that. But hey, you can test the water and every 5 years change your vehicle over on a novated lease with your tax savings. So I guess that's my message. If you're looking at an EV, anyone here is look at doing it on a novated lease. You're going to get great tax savings. You're going to get GST savings.
That's great, Lynelle.
Thank you.
How do we get in contact with you?
So my number is 0401 485 211. And I can certainly step you through what those tax savings look like. The company I work for, Easi, we're very much about informing people of their choices. So we'll let you know what it's going to look like for you so you can make that really informed choice.
Right. All right. Well, we'll make sure we get that message.
Thank you so much.
Out to the rest of our members in our newsletter. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lynelle, and thanks for joining us this evening. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, sorry. Is there any questions for Lynelle from anybody? No, we're all clear. All right. Okay, Neil, over to you. Finally.
Turn my sound down.
All right. We're good there? Yeah, beautiful. All right. First and foremost, most important thing, guys, the pizzas are on their way. So if someone just wants to keep an ear out, pizza man rocks up. All right. For everyone else, sorry, but pizzas take priority. All right. So to give you guys a bit of a background, so I'm skill build training. All right, we've got the training centre up here. Now, before I came on the scene, skill build was primarily renewable energies, battery storage, off-grid, all that sort of things. My background is I started off as heavy diesel. Then I became a refrigeration mechanic, then electrician afterwards. So I kind of spread myself across the whole board there. And since then, we've now started to push into the electric vehicles. So coming to these sorts of things is quite interesting for us. So it's very rarely that as, I guess, trainers and practitioner in the area, I've got my own electric vehicle workshop in Albury where I do conversions, repairs, maintenance and all that across the board. We've also got the 2024 Nissan Leaf, 2013 Tesla 3, and we've got a couple of busted up old Nissan Leafs that we play around with as well. So yeah, I guess coming from a trades point of view, it's quite interesting talking to you guys as the end users, because there's always this big disconnect between the trades and the end users. So it's interesting there, and it also, I hope, helps get you guys in touch with what's going on behind the scenes. So a lot of times when I talk about the standards, it's about DNSPs, it's about governance, it's about all that sort of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And then we get to you guys here, which is what we don't spend a lot of time having a chat with, that are just saying, why the hell can't we do this? Why is it that hard? It's not that hard to just do this. We should be able to do that. So I think it's quite important to get this nice connection between what we know about what's going on behind the scenes, where it's progressing, what you guys are thinking or heard where it's going to go, and what's actually really happening. Because there's a lot that comes into play with it. You know, the biggest example that we've got currently is mechanics. There is no legal requirement for mechanics to work on electric vehicles, which is quite idiotic, because if you look at an electric vehicle, it's gone into Class A electrical, side of things, and because it's on wheels and there's no standards on it, because we've never had this sort of machine in the market before, you've got guys that know absolutely nothing about this sort of stuff that are in there playing with it. Whereas the restrictions that someone like myself gets just for installing a PowerPoint on a wall is a lot heavier than changing out a three-phase AC drive motor on an electric vehicle that your wife's going to drive the kids around in. So we've got this huge disconnect between industries at the moment that we're trying to bridge together, but we've got a few things that come into play that are holding that up. And a lot of it is because there's been I guess you could call it an artificial push. Usually technology, when it comes into the market, gets a very slow uptake on the buy, and that's because a lot of people wait to see what the, I guess, service industries are doing before they actually go in and commit to them. Whereas with the electric vehicles having quite a large media governmentary sort of emphasis and push on it, we've had this uptake which has exceeded what it is that the services can do at this point in time. So we're trying to, play a little bit of catch up on that one as well. So it's a very interesting field. But what I say to you guys that are quite enthusiastic about it is, you still have to remember horse and cart. All right, when the vehicle first came about, they were never going to replace the horses, according to people. All right, horses were the best thing out. Vehicles weren't going to be anywhere. There's no time places. You had all the things. What about service stations? I can just feed my horse on the side of the road. What about servicing? My horse doesn't need, all that sort of thing. And then now look at it. Only rich people have horses. So, eventually I can see it becoming the same thing. Is in the future, it'll only be rich people that have internal combustion engines, because the cost of fuel and all that will also reflect the supply and demand that drops off on it. So I know it's frustrating for a lot of you guys being enthusiasts that are quite keen on this, to see how slow it's moving. But believe it or not, it's actually moving very fast behind the scenes, a lot faster than what government's comfortable with, and a lot faster than what industry can keep up with. So this is kind of where we run into these little hiccups and issues along the way. So a lot of it's bridging and goodwill at the moment. Now, as for myself, to what I'm doing here, it's a tough one. I mainly deal with trades and where they're going with it and about infrastructure for it. So you guys being on the other side of it, I guess it's probably best if I just open the board up to conversation pieces, and then I can get a better idea on what it is that you as the end user are looking at and wanting to deal with, that we can then try and progress forward with. All right, so sorry guys, I just think we might have someone rocking up. Can someone step out and see what's going on? We got phone calls going off. We got technology. You got to love it.
I have a question about power and water with regulations. It just seems like they've got no idea what very good agree going on at this stage. Asking certain questions, and they really couldn't really give me answers. I guess they're just like trying to wait for everybody else to do something. And then
look, to be fair with DNSPs, I guess again this is where I try not to be too cynical.
Because
yes and no. So it's really interesting. So for those of you guys that don't know, whenever we say DNSP, we're talking about the supplier, not the retailer, but the supplier. So up here it's Power and Water that does everything, which is fine. Down where I am, we've got Essential that owns the network, but then we've got things like Dodo, and you've got Red Energy and all that sort of thing. So the DNSPs are the people that own the infrastructure and own the network, and then the retailers are the ones that actually set up an account with you. So currently we've got a few different things that go on with it. Now, to be fair to the DNSPs, because everyone gets the impression that they're dragging the chain, and to an extent they are, but the entire power grid was only designed to push power in one direction. That's the biggest issue we've got. The whole thing was designed to come from the power plant to the substations, high transmission lines, through transformers, lower voltage, into houses, and that's it. Now we're trying to push them back. So now we're trying to push back up the low voltage line. We're trying to go through the transformers to step it up, and then we're trying to push it back down into the generator, which isn't good for anything. So it's about, they're trying to do redesigns on this entire grid as well to try and accommodate for feeding back into it. The other side of it was we never expected it to go so large so quick. That was the biggest issue. You look at solar, for example, that's Australia's one of the leading countries in solar uptake, actually, really, and same as with these vehicles. So the issue is we're not only designed not to push back into the grid, but the amount that's being pushed back into the grid is exceeding what the grid can actually handle at some times. And then we've got the other issue that you can't just shut off a power station. So when you push back in, there's too much power in the grid. Unlike everything else that we're used to, is power must go somewhere. It has to. We can't push it in and just, if it doesn't get used, it doesn't matter. If we don't use it, it blows things up. And that's our big problem. So when we get all of this rooftop solar and all of these cars and vehicles and all that sort of thing that can essentially push back into the grid, if we've got the generations at high capacity and then suddenly we get this huge influx of power coming in from everywhere else, what do we do with that energy? We can't just shut off the generator because these things are so big that they take so long to wind down. So we can't just shut them off. So the thing is what we're now resorting to is the utilities being able to switch off things like your solar, your batteries, disconnect your cars, ramp down, air cons, ramp up air cons, all that. So they're now trying to use appliances and things within the house to fluctuate on their loads and all that, which is where the issue with this, what we keep talking about, this vehicle to X, this vehicle to home, vehicle to grid comes into play, is because we've got all of this, that during this REV study, they came out and said, if we hit the 2050 targets for electric vehicle uptake, energy storage in Australia will be 5 times out of the Snowy Hydro 2, which is phenomenal amounts of energy. Like you're talking about, you can run states with it. What do you do with all of that energy? You need to be able to control it. And this is where all the holdup comes into is how do we control this? How do we do it? And then the other side of it is, particularly talking about this vehicle to home, vehicle to grid, you need the infrastructure connected. You need people to connect their assets. And we sit there and go, oh, but majority of people would, or, how do you make people connect to the grid? Like they say, 90% of the time, private vehicles stay parked up doing nothing. So why can't you plug them in? All well and good, but you need to plug it in. And if you look at 2 times, 5 times, 10 times Snowy Hydro 2, if even 5% of people don't plug in their vehicle, that is a huge deficit on the grid. Where does that power come from?
This might be a dumb question for you, but most people don't really want vehicle cheap. They just want VGH. They just want to be able to use the battery in their car to power their house overnight.
Yeah.
That's not going back to the grid.
No, you're 100% correct. It's same as having battery storage, but the issue still comes into play that we still need the grid. So this is this is the thing that comes to it, is we still need the grid unless everyone wants to be fully off grid, which just isn't feasible for a large majority of people. We still need the grid there, which still means we still need the infrastructure, we still need the generators, we still need everything else. So the whole thing is as people get more and more off the grid as such during the nighttime, all that sort of thing, and we're not pulling from that, what are we then doing with the generators? And I know for us as the end user, who cares? Like, it's always come down to, no one really cares what's going on with the lines out there because we've never had to worry about it. But now it is, well, what are we going to do with it? And then you've got the other side of it, that when these vehicles are discharging, it's all good. It keeps that house, asset, whatever it is, off the grid. Do you then rearrange the way the industrial market works, so they work at night time, to utilise the power generated to then free up the solar during the day to charge up the cars? Or do the cars then have to charge? It comes down to a different thing. I know exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you, but it also comes down to the bigger picture, as we've still got this infrastructure here. What are we going to do with it when people start using it less and less? Which is just as big a problem as what happens when people use it too much, because we've still got the same problem with too much energy in the grid. If you get every house to pull off the grid, for example, or even every second, third or fourth house to pull off the grid, the generators are designed to run at a minimum capacity. So you've still got the same problem. The generator's still running. What are we doing with the power? Where are we going to deal with it? And yeah, look, it works. It does on small scale. But once we start to bring it into large scale, and that's been the issue. Yeah, battery storage for homes, for example, government's never really cared about it to start off with, because the occasional house, I think it was one in every 3,000 people had a battery sitting on the house. It meant nothing to the grid. And then now that people have started to go more and more to it, we start to get these real, it throws out, it's to do with the generators. Biggest one is it throws out the generation, because we can't ramp up a generator immediately, but we can't shut it down immediately either. So with people being able to pull on and off the grid as they please, as they want, you've got this continual fluctuating load between the generators. So it's an interesting time for the DNSPs. And look, it's something that they're going to have to figure out. It's as simple as that. They will have to figure out, because it's the way the industry's going and it's the way the market's going, and they're going to have to do something with it. And what it's coming down to is we need a new form of baseload generator is our biggest issue. We need something that is quick start, quick stop, so we can flow with renewables is a big one. And yeah, so that's currently where they sit. It just comes down to what are we doing with the infrastructure pre-existing, and pulling people off the grid we think would help, and it does to an extent. It helps really well to an extent, but then when we pull too many people off, then we've got the other issue as we've still got everything there, we're still producing an X amount, so what do we now do with it? You know, it's an interesting thing, because people don't run on when it's convenient. People want it to be now. So we can't sit there and say, oh well, we can't do certain things because we haven't got enough solar or wind and the batteries aren't ready to go and all that sort of thing, so just hold off on everything. People want to do everything whenever they feel like doing it, and for that you need a high demand grid. So I know it's a bit of a run-round sort of answer, but it comes down to the infrastructure is a big problem.
Just a point to make too, I think it is so complicated and it's so complex that you can't actually describe it easily. Because of that, it's easily politicized.
Yes.
And we've had the climate wars, and we're actually going through another round of the climate wars coalition. And this is one area where I think that AEVA particularly can help provide information so that we can put out information to help people understand more than what they do now. Yeah.
The other issue is and it comes down to this climate wars. We should never have brought electric vehicles into the climate war thing. It's a new technology. It's a new form of transportation. It's a new fuel source. It's a fuel source that we can actually keep making and reusing and carrying on with. EVs should be in the industry and in the market as a new technology. Yeah, people are always saying, and the biggest thing that you start to get now, because it's gone into the political side of the climate wars, is you now get people, you got people that won't touch it because, well, what do you believe? Yeah, one minute you get EVs are the best thing in the world for the environment. Next minute you get from cradle to grave to the worst thing in the world for the environment. Then you get the other one, it doesn't matter what you've got, it's where you're charging from. So until the grid goes green, what's the point on having an EV? And then the other one is all of a sudden you've just saved 30 polar bears. Like, who knows where it's going, what it's doing. And like you always get, you've always got one side that can find the crap on it. You've always got the other side that can find the good on it. So until you remove that political aspect and look at it for what it is, it's a new technology. It's no different. You got a petrol engine, you got a diesel engine. Everyone knows a diesel engine is good for doing hard work, heavy lifting, hard pulling. Petrol engines are quick, short start, run around sort of things. Everyone understands that one's got an application, the other one's got an application. We need to look at electric vehicles the same way. Where is their application? Where do they play into the market? How do they help you as the end customer? What's their benefits? And pull it away from the political side. Because
for a smartphone, phone knows easy to pull it, dumb phone, I'll figure out stuff or whatever. I only have to charge it once every couple of weeks.
Yes.
And that's using it every day.
Yep.
So it's a big step backwards now, look, one of the top of the line smartphones. And the battery was the last day.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I've gone backwards, but
you've gone forwards
it's
in
new
technology. Yes.
You do different things with it.
Yeah. And look, you're always going to get these stumblings, and because it's dealing with legislation right now. This is our big issue, and some of it isn't as some of it's got nothing to do with infrastructure, to be honest with you. Yeah, the classic there, if you're just running your house. Yeah, for the meantime, until we get to saturation point that the grid is running at minimum capacity, which we're not, we're already running at over 100% capacity on the grid. So we could start to get people off, or partially off grid, in droves before it's even going to become a problem for the infrastructure when we hit minimum, production levels. But because it has to go through legislation, and then you've got your standards and your policies, and then you've got your different industry bodies that it goes to. You've got some industry bodies that don't like it, so they're going to push against it. You've got some industry bodies that are all on board with it. Then you've got some bodies that don't understand it, and then you've got other areas that are idolising it. Then you've got, so the issue is throughout the government, we've got 4 or 5 different political standpoints, from legislation right the way through to different parties that keep hindering this or speed it up or change it. And it's frustrating. It's idiotic, but it's what we're dealing with.
So if somebody wanted to do it now, vehicle and I had a vehicle built it like a vehicle, can you do it?
Yes. Yes. So yes, you can.
And you do it?
No. And this is where, again, this is where we start to hit these 2 big issues. So, for example, you can buy, they're called bi-directional chargers. Yeah, so that's the actual name of the chargers. That big thing behind you there can be set up as a bi-directional charger for an electric vehicle as well. Right? So we've got them there. We've got them. They work. We know what they are. We know how they work. We can, do it all. The issue is legislation, which is why I don't install it, because I'm a licensed electrician. If I install something that isn't covered under legislation, I lose my license. Yes. And no. So, and the reason why I say yes and no is you as a homeowner are allowed to install anything you want on your house and still perfectly fine. You're crazy to do it, but you can do it. There's nothing illegal about it. You're crazy to do it, but you can do it. If you try and get someone in like myself to do it, I can't do it because I'm banned by the little book that says no, I cannot do it.
People like the library buyers, the systems can do it themselves when they do that, they want to.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the issue that it comes into, but then we start to bring into other aspects of it. It's the same as with batteries. People used to always put batteries on the houses by themselves, which nice and easy. It's actually a very easy task to do. Even you can buy the bi-direct, the Quasar 2, you can buy it, no problems at all. You can install it. But the issue that we now get is because we're dealing with generation sources. So beforehand, putting a load on the house doesn't matter. Who cares? Because we're dealing with generation source, you now have knock-on effects later on, further on down the point. Like
Rooftop solar.
So rooftop, solar's a generation source, batteries are a generation source, your vehicle's a generation source, because it's producing power and pushing it into the premises. And that's where we start to come across the little issues there. So, but to answer your question, you can do it. They do have the technology out there. Right now, what we're stuck on is legislation.
Next question is, if you're a betting man, when do you reckon the legislation is going?
I'm not a betting man. That's the thing. And the reason why I say that, and look, not trying to take a shot at Sam or anything, but ever since electric vehicles have come out in the market, we've heard this from them. Next year we've got bi-directional. The year after we've got bi-directional. We're going to release 10 cars that can do this. And you hear it. And I don't doubt for a second that behind the scene, all of their R&D is there and they're raring to go. But until the government gets their act into gear, which quite frankly, the way we're seeing it now, I've been on the mechanical standards board, I've been on the electrical industry board, I've been on the electric vehicle, that's dealing with the electrical safety industry boards. It's not going to happen anytime soon, which is really frustrating because they've got the bi-directional charger. It's there, it's ready to go. You've got the vehicle, all the vehicle manufacturers have done their thing, it's there and it's ready to go. You got the government that sits in the middle. And the problem is with our electrical standards is we've got a federal standard and then we've got state-based standards. And then we've got DNSP standards. So New South Wales is a classic. We've got 4 different DNSPs throughout New South Wales. And then we've got something like 18 different retailers on the way through. So you've got the federal standard, you've got the New South Wales standard, then you've got the 4 DNSP standards and requirements, and then you've got what the retailers will allow. So, you know, for example, when you put solar on, your retailer can say, no, we're not going to pay you for the solar because of whatever requirements they'll run into. So it's a mess. And then on the East Coast, you guys don't have it because you're not part of it, but we've got AEMO, you know, the Australian energy market. And then they've got their own little thing as well, and they're part of.
Our DSP is like Power Water Federation.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Yep. So that's the issue we've got, is because we are, a federation and we've got broken down different states, each one's got its own set of rules. So it's about trying to get each one to try and get on board with the same thing. And that's where our big issue comes from. No.
That's right. Another question just in regards to, like, you can live off grid. Are there times where you'll live without power? That sort of question. Like, is that what you mean on now? What was your question there on now?
Oh, yes, I'd like to ask the
And
question.
now, did you want to like say your question out to?
Yeah, I would. Thank you. I'd like to know why NT Gov is so behind everywhere else. Because if we're looking at the EV world and we're looking at solar power, and we live in this country where we have abundance of solar, why is the government so opposed?
Really interesting question. Now,
Thank you.
yeah, for you guys, there's one thing you have to understand is you're, what, the second or third largest mass, like state or territory in Australia, and you've got one of the lowest populations. So you've also got this issue of you've got quite a lot of land and you've got quite a large spread out population. So
a high solar.
What's that?
We've got a high solar.
Absolutely. And you can put that solar in, but how are you going to move it around?
Yeah.
That's the issue. Then the other one is, and to be perfectly honest with you, to start getting political, the NT government doesn't have money.
Right.
They haven't had money for a long, long time. They have been running in deficit to the point that the federal government's had to prop them up quite a few times to keep the lights and power and water going on, which means they haven't put money into the infrastructure. So your infrastructure is 15 years behind the rest of the country.
Yeah.
When it comes to its setup and its reliability. So you've got, you guys have got a couple of double whammies. First of all, you've got this this fact that you've got low population, high land area to start off with, even though you've got good solar. You've got a government that hasn't invested in infrastructure for the last 20 odd years. So you've got to try and catch all the infrastructure up with it as well. And then it's no different to WA though. WA is very different to the rest of the states as well, because you guys aren't part of the energy network. So what happens when you become isolated from the energy network? There's pros and cons. Being part of the energy network can be bad in some aspects because you're governed by other states as well, but it's good because it forces you to move with technology. When you've got WA and the NT that aren't part of the energy network, you've become self-reliant, which means it's very easy to get caught up in your own little bubble and get stuck in the old ways of producing power. And it gets very expensive to change the old ways of producing power. And then, like WA, you're running gas reserves. So it's cheaper.
So how do we change it?
How do you change it? Well, a couple of ways. First of all, you've got to find people that want to spend money on it.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's got to be a political thing. The government won't change it until they start losing votes. It's as simple as that. Or they connect to the energy network. And that's the biggest thing is, it's a really tough one, but it's unfortunately the introduction of this stuff comes down to political.
So do you think NT will catch on with the rest of Australia at some stage or not?
Well, eventually they'll have to.
Yeah, they're going to have to.
Eventually they'll have to. And ironically, I honestly believe, and of course we've seen it throughout history anyway with technology, the NT and WA will actually end up spending less money for better stuff in the future. Because right now the East Coast is the guinea pig for Australia. And you can see it. We're
Oh,
throwing
they are, 100%,
yeah, we're throwing
100%.
hundreds of billions of dollars at things
Yeah.
that don't work, half work, kind of work, should work. Yeah, and we're finding out all these issues with our networks and infrastructures that we never expected was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because the NT is not connected to the network, they're not worried about it. So what's going to happen is in, however long it takes, they're going to say, all right, we're going to adopt the same network as the rest of Australia. Thanks for figuring it out, guys. We'll just take the system that works.
Yeah, they will.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely, they will.
So look, eventually you guys will, because you'll have to. It'll be just like the you go back to old technologies, the train systems, different gauges. Sooner or later, everyone had to jump onto the same gauge because otherwise they just couldn't keep up with the way things are going. So sooner or later, yes, you will.
So your advice to getting us forward?
What's that?
Your advice for getting us forward?
Getting you forward. So
Yeah.
that's a really tough one. You guys are actually doing the best thing that you can be doing. So when it comes to the introduction of technology into the market, especially electrical and mechanical, the way it always works is you guys have early adopters, and this is the way everything works. We get early adopters. They're the ones that everyone calls the quacks and the crazies and the hippies and the like people that lived off grid. They're all hippies originally when they lived off grid. Now you've got CEOs spending millions of dollars to become off grid. So you've got your early adopters. These are the guys that everyone always laughs at and says it'll never work and all that sort of thing. But what it does is it then creates a niche in the market. You then get people like myself that go, well, I'm going to be a mechanic that works on electric vehicles, because this small percentage of people that have got them are now the ones that are going to start coming to me. So I've got a trapped market as such. And then the other thing you get is so from there you then start to get the mass that moves on it. And this is a real trial for technology. The early adopters you'll always get, and they'll bring in the worst things. Look at Citroen, classic, worst vehicle in the world, but people still buy it. Don't know why. But so you get them. Now, what you then get is you then get the masses. So these early adopters start to see benefits. Whether it be reduction of fuel costs because fuel keeps going up. Eventually they can start to power their houses and all that. So now the masses go, hang on, this is actually a pretty good thing. And then you get the masses jump on board, and then our service industry then goes, well, this is run of the mill. We're just going to start servicing these because the masses got them. And then you've got your late oncomers, the guys that we're never going to change, full stop, end of story. They can't buy these things anymore, so they have to come over to the new technology. So as frustrating as it is for you guys, because what can you do? You guys are actually doing the first and most important step. You're the early adopters. You're the first step. You're the part that's now bringing in the likes of, your BYD, one of the world's largest production companies, is now sitting up here in Darwin. It starts to bring all of this into play. You look at Tesla with the battery market. No one knew what a home battery was until Tesla came out. And then all of a sudden, it's now just a common everything, and everyone, to the point that most people call a home battery a Tesla, even though they're not. But anyway, so it's the very same thing. Is you've got the early adopters. We're now starting to see the masses move, which has now started to prompt the governments to put more money and energy behind it. So I guess you could say we're now moving out of the early adopter stage, going into the bulk, into the masses. And now we're waiting for the government infrastructure to soothe the fears of the masses. A good thing about an early adopter is they'll go, bugger it, I'll drive across the Nullarbor. Let's see how it goes. And that's just what you do. Like, who cares? But then when you get the masses on board, it's, what happens if I can't make it to here and this breaks down and that happens and all that other stuff that comes into it. That's who the government's now got to soothe. Once they get satisfied with it, then they'll start to jump on board. And then you get a snowball effect. Then everything just moves quick as anything after that. So unfortunately, to answer your question more directly, there's not much you can do but wait for the government to figure out what the government...
Yeah, but I was going to say that. We've got to wait for all those other states around us to just get on board and be the guinea pigs, and then we'll eventually get there.
Well, so you guys will get there, but basically...
But you live off grid?
Yes.
Yes. So whereabouts are you?
So I'm in a place called Brocklesby. It's about 45 minutes out of Albury-Wodonga.
Yeah. And so you can sustain yourself off grid?
Yes. So I've got a 3 acre block. 3 acre block off grid. I've got the aquaponics, the boar, chickens, the whole lot. So I'm essentially entirely self-sustained with it.
Self-sustained.
Yeah, which is the reason why I started to push down that couple of things. I don't like the government. It's probably the first one. But secondly, it was to prove that you could run an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it. So I don't own it. The company does. The REVs, Riverina Electric Hybrid Vehicles, owns. We've got the two Nissan Leafs and the Tesla.
Yep.
And there was always this thing that you cannot live off grid and have an electric vehicle, because when you go through the physics of off grid, the sheer size of the battery and solar, and all that. But you can. You have to be a little bit smarter, and you have to change. And it's like anything. You've got to change habits. It's no different. When people put solar on their roof, run your air cons during the day. Do your washing
you work
during the
it
day.
out, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. Don't wait. So, well and good. You put all this solar on, and you plug the Nissan Leaf in at about 11 o'clock. I can have it charged by about 2, 3 o'clock, as well as have my batteries charged, because of the way it lines in with the way everything goes. Can I come home at night at 6 o'clock at night and plug it in? No, because I drain the battery and I'll have a big problem. So you can be smart with the way you do it. And then also, like the Leaf, with where I am, I can do 5 days driving in and out of town. So then, on a Saturday, I can plug it in. So, you've got to be a bit smarter with the way you do it, but you can do it. And that's the other side of it as well with the trying to get the masses on board, is you've got to be honest with people. Yeah.
I agree, 100%.
Changing technology requires a change in lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's as simple as that. And you have to be honest with it, because I cannot honestly sit there and say, oh, if you buy a Nissan Leaf, it's no different to having a Toyota Land Cruiser. It's hugely different. From the way you plan to drive, because of where the infrastructure is at the moment, to understanding the way the ranging works on it, and then doing little things. They have a smaller capacity or driving range on them, so you've got to charge them up more regularly. So instead of just coming home, stepping out of the car, walking inside, having dinner, going to bed, come home, plug the car in, walk inside, have dinner, go to bed. You've just got to get people on board that yes, there is a slight way to change, but it's not a huge change. We're not saying you can't turn on the lights between 7 and 8. We're just saying that you've just got to plug your car in every second or third day when you get home, which who cares? It takes 10 seconds to do it. It's not a hardship. It's just that change in attitude, and people primarily don't like a change.
But you can do that with your EV?
What's
solely living off grid?
What, plug it in at night time?
Yeah, no, not nighttime, but if you're home during the day, you can plug it in. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
I think, and the reason why I asked the question, sorry, is because I think we need to really shift the focus from people who are very scared of going into EVs. We need to understand that if you can't plug in over nighttime, you can do it.
Well, all I've done with mine is I've just said it's called a catch power. So it's technology that's already out there, and it monitors the amount that you're using from your solar and batteries, and monitors the amount of production from solar. And whenever you get excess solar, it just turns on other circuits.
Okay.
So during summer, for example, the sun starts to come up where I am at about 5:30 mark.
Queensland, yes.
Solar starts to produce at 6. Now, I'm not on the road till about 7. So during summer, I've actually programmed this thing that the first bit of solar in the morning turns on the EV charger and charges up, puts the charge in, and it's an hour's worth of charge. It might only be 3 or 4 kilowatt hours. But when you look at it, I drive, 30 Ks into town, 30 Ks home. That's basically a one-way drive. And you do that, and then you do the same thing, and this is the best thing with it. We've got the technology, and this is what we've been talking about. It's here. We can use it. We've got the technology there that I do the same thing. I come home at night time, and this thing's programmed that when I plug the vehicle in, if there's any excess solar going on and my batteries are over 80%, it then says, no, we're not going to charge the batteries. We're going to charge the vehicle.
Gotcha.
So it's
and
there.
I think that's a really big thing here in the NT, because people are very scared about charging.
So,
and
Lynelle,
having...
can I just add something?
Lynelle, of course.
I've done. I mean, I'm not off grid. I'm still connected to the grid, but I've got a large solar array on the roof of my house, and I run my whole house and charge the car comfortably, and just do the things that Neil's talked about. I just manage the car. You can do it in the NT. That's the frustrating And that's
Yeah,
actually.
and I
the
think that's the
drive-
problem is people don't realise they can do it.
I know, but there's so
Yeah.
much solar power, it just makes so much sense, which is.
I had a house in New South Wales and I bought my EV, I've got a 32 amp circuit put in so that I could charge the car. I had a charger that basically talked to my solar and then I had a computer that basically sat there and did the intermediate sort of stuff. I had it so my air conditioning would come on if certain conditions were right. I was using around I was importing about 2 kilowatt hours of electricity a day. And that was generally in the mornings when we got up to go to work, and then in the evenings when we were cooking food. That was about it. It is so easy to do. It's just the getting the information out there so that you can do it. And then most importantly, it's changing behaviour. So you need to have the tools there to show you how your actions influence your power usage. If you've got that available, it's really, really easy.
The other issue we get is when you actually break it down, what people are scared of is something that's unjustified. So, for example, the biggest classic one that I always hear is, or what happens, from Albury, what happens if I want to drive to Sydney, which is only 500 k's away, mind you, and you turn around and you say,
When did you last drive?
when did you last drive to Sydney? And everyone goes, oh, never. Yeah. Or they sit there and say, well, what if I want to tow my boat? Do you own a boat? No. Same thing, and you get the same thing here, What if I want to go out four-wheel driving and all that? Do you own a four-wheel drive? No. Well, then it's a moot point, isn't it, mate? But that's the thing is people have got this fear that, what if, and, we call it, we do it with everything, and it's not uncommon, we do it with off-grid and all that sort of thing, people, what happens if the sun doesn't rise for the next 30 days? Well, mate, we're all dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. Stop stressing about it. So, they've been told this. These things are going to stop you from living a life. Well, they're going to stop you from living a life that you're not actually living.
I think we could actually ask people if they have solar water on their roofs.
Yep.
So, yeah. So you got something solar up there. So why do you fear it?
Yeah, it's not the solar; it's the vehicle that people, because everyone sits there and goes, "Oh, these vehicles are restricted in range, and these vehicles can only be charged at certain times, and these vehicles and all that." It's always these vehicles. What happens if I run low in charge? Well, what happens if you run out of fuel? You got the same problem. Oh, but I have to find the time to charge it. Well, you seem to find the time to fuel your car up.
Yeah.
It's not. They've basically been pushed this furphy of these things are going to destroy your way of life in a way that you're not actually living life anyway. So
I 100% agree. I 100% agree with you. But look, I won't be speaking out of turn. But in the NT, people are very scared about the longevity of when they charge their car, as opposed to driving to Catherine, as opposed to doing this. And I 100% agree. We need to shift that focus. You've got cars that will give you 500 kilometres in battery charge. You're not going to run out.
But the other side of it is, let's just be perfectly honest here. 100%, if you are someone that operates and runs a business or even just drives just for the sake of driving, between here and Alice Springs and Cooper Pedy, at this point in time, an electric vehicle is probably not right for you. Right. But you are 0.5% of the people that live in Darwin.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So and that's what I mean by be honest. Let's be brutal here. 90% of electric vehicles on the market cannot compete with a petrol or diesel engine on range. Just as simple as that. Straight off the cuff, cannot do it. Yeah. Now, if you're in an area where you've got the infrastructure to fill in the shortfalls, fantastic. Who cares? It's now a moot point. If you're in an area like the NT where you don't have the filling on the shortfalls, then all right.
We're getting there, though.
Yeah, you're getting there.
Yeah.
But for that particular application, absolutely, just not going to work. Fine.
Yeah.
Right. But what about the other 99% of people? So we're always, the argument against electric vehicles is always for the 1%er. Yeah, all right, and I'll give them that forever and a day. 100%, you're perfectly right. The vehicle will not work in that instance. But what about the rest of them? Yeah, electric vehicles, it's a no-brainer. I don't know why they're not in cities.
Oh, 100% agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cities and suburbs, you look at 150k range around any city. Perfect, fantastic
Yeah.
place for it. You've got the infrastructure there, you've got everything going on. Yeah, it should be, but
You got like people with 3-4 cars, 4 bicycles.
yeah, it's so, our argument against has always been for that 1%. We need to shift the focus back to the 99. Now, once the other 99% start to get on board, then the governments go, well, we've got to try and sort out this 1%. And they will. But so it comes down to how we explain the vehicle. And quite frankly, I've seen it since the vehicles have come out to where they are running now. The more we push this whole they're environmentally friendly and they're green thing, the more we push people away. We're putting a hindrance on it because now it's a political movement. It's not a technological movement. And quite frankly, there's one thing, and Australia is a really interesting market with it. Australians hate being told what to do politically. It's just, and I've seen it. You'll get people that will cut their own leg off to try and, prove a point against a particular party. It makes no sense. But we're very much like it. So as soon as you push it to become political, you then start to get this drive on it. Whereas if you can start to push it to, this is how it's going to help you. It's going to save you. It's going to benefit you. Look how good this is. Then people jump onto it. And then the byproduct is the environmental. And I'm not saying that, we scrap the whole, net zero and going green and all that. By all means, we need to do something. But we can still get the same result, go about it a different way. If you tell people that you need to go green, so you have to buy a $60,000 car, people are going to say, nick off. If you tell people that you can buy a $60,000 car that's going to save you $4.5 grand a year on electricity and $5 grand or 10 grand on fuel, people go, yeah, I can get on board with that. That's what I want. And then the byproduct is saving the environment. So the issue is we're pushing it the wrong way. We're trying to tell people they have to do this. And people will say no every single time.
Well, in some ways, the government has tried to do this with novated leasing. And that's where I come from, right? So you can, at this stage, you can get a Tesla that's worth $65,000 on a novated lease, or you could get a petrol Toyota Corolla for $35,000. It's going to cost you the same amount. Look, I think the government's trying to get there with people, to get on board with it. 100%.
Yeah, I think you've got government departments, but governments in total, I think they're still very confused on where they're going and what they're doing. And unfortunately, and we've seen it since the 2013 onwards, it's all gone. You look at all the way the federal governments have been running ever since 2013. It's all about how do I appeal to the masses? And that's all they've been doing, which is why you'll find when you start to get the Greens start to kick up a fuss, all of a sudden the government's going for heavier green targets. When the Greens' voice starts to die down, all of a sudden we're going for, in quotations, a reliable energy grid that involves gas. Then when someone else, so the governments, to be honest, the governments don't care. They're not interested. They're all about, can it win them votes? You've got certain government departments and you've got local governments that are trying to push it. Absolutely, I'll agree with you on that. But in general, your federals and your bigger governments don't care. Unless it's going to win them votes, they really couldn't care. And that's the unfortunate side of it. That's the issue when technology becomes political. Then it gets thrown around like a political handball. Whereas if you can start to talk to people about the technology, then it becomes a citizen's interest, not a governmentary interest. And that's when the government has to act.
Yeah, 100% agree. It becomes a citizen's interest that it's about what's going to work for the individual, not the government.
Yeah, but that's the way we work as a whole. A democracy is all about getting the individual to work for what's best for them and what's best for society, not to get them to work for what's best for society, because that never works. So until I can see a return for investment for me buying a car, why would I buy one? Yeah, and you can sit there and you can tell me, and you know, oh, I know this might grind a few people up, but you can tell people the hardcore truths about whatever's going on environmentally. But if I cannot see a return for investment for my purchase, why would I do it? And that's the way people think. And that's where you need to be targeting with EVs. Why would they do it? Well, let's tell them why they'll do it. Yeah? And then you can get the other. Right now, we've got the tail wagging the dog. We got the government trying to dictate to the people what they're doing. You need to be the other way around. And the only way you can do that is by educating people on where it's viable and where it's beneficial for them to go down that path. So that's where I believe vehicles need to be pushed.
And probably a point between is about 93% of people that have an EV won't go back to internal combustion engines. Why is that? That is, I think that's the thing to push. And if that can make traction, then it'll be a lot easier. Because once you've driven an EV, chances are you won't go back to internal combustion.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a few things there, and like, we keep talking about this vehicle to business, vehicle to home, vehicle to grid side of things. Push vehicle to load. Vehicle to load's got some nice things, and like you already saw it. People, they show them with the coffee machine or the little electric cooker and all that sort of thing, and on the side of the road, and then you get this one person that goes, I can put a caravan plug on my house and run my power with that. Yeah, you can. And then you get another person goes, oh, well, I can put a relay in there that's going to do this. Yes, you can. And then next minute, then you've got the people going along to the governments going, I want to be able to do more with my vehicle. Why can't I do more with my vehicle? Pull your finger out and do more with my vehicle. So right now, the government talks about this big carrot that sits in the yonder, vehicle to home, vehicle to grid, vehicle to this, vehicle to that. We're going to do all these cool things. And it's just dragging. You guys, as the smaller guys that, people that are looking for electric vehicles start to do research. We talk about vehicle to load. You can run little things. You can run power circuits. You can do this. You can do that. So then now it comes from, I'm going to hold off on buying an electric vehicle until vehicle to grid, vehicle to building's been sorted out, which God knows when that's going to happen, to, well, Jesus, let's grab one of these things because look at what I can do with it now. So, it's shifting people's point of views. Right now, we've been led down the garden path with these things are a silver bullet, which, they might be in aspects, and in another aspect they're not. But what do they do for me? And that's always coming from the mechanical industry. That's always been the driver. If you're trying to push vehicles in the industry, the driver has always been, where does it benefit me?
Neil, can I suggest we kind of change
Yep.
tack a little bit?
Yep.
Just in terms of servicing vehicles up here in Darwin, that's up your alley.
Yep.
We can train people to work on it.
Yes. Yep.
What is the situation?
Right. So the situation, it's a national situation at this point in time that there's no real set requirements in regards to what mechanic needs. So you can take your electric vehicle to any mechanic and they're legally allowed to work on. Yeah. So because it's got 4 wheels, it's got a braking system. And look, I'll be perfectly honest, 90% of the vehicle falls under a standard mechanic. Absolutely. When you look at the brakes and gearboxes and all that, like it basically nothing's changed. It's the motor that's changed. And its fuel source has changed. Where there is a push from the industry, and it's come from Queensland, is to make it mandatory for what we call depower repower, which is to be able to depower the vehicle to make it safe to work on and then repower the vehicle after repairs. Which then also starts to bring into the other aspect of it that people don't want to train up their mechanics. So until it's mandatory, people won't do it, which is the issue that we come across there. But then it also comes down to a lot of mechanics won't touch electric vehicles because they don't know what's going on with them.
I think 60 volts DC is high voltage, isn't it?
No, so
That's low voltage.
So you've got ELV going into low voltage, and this is the other issue that we've got, is the automotive industry has called it HV, which the problem is it falls under LV in the electrical standards. So up to, from above 60 up to 1,000 volts, it's actually LV. From 60 and below, it's ELV. Above 1,000 is HV.
a bit of differentiation, DC versus AC.
No, AC goes up higher. Yep,
Oh,
so,
okay.
so we move around, but, so the issue there is because they call the battery a HV battery, none of the standards in Australia cover it because their voltage actually falls under LV. So because someone's decided to use the terminology differently, it's thrown out the whole thing. So there's no mandate on it. And like I mentioned before, because these things are on wheels, all of the electrical standards have been about fixed appliances.
Yeah.
So currently there's no mandatory requirements for mechanics, sorry.
But in terms of businesses or people up here in town, you don't have to share their surnames or.
There's a post in Darwin CED that doesn't, they work on my car, that I'm happy to. I've had other people that didn't want to touch it. I haven't had a need for anybody to do anything, but
Well, full service centre is not.
Yeah,
I guess I was just trying to.
You've got people like Darwin Group saying, oh, you gotta like, hit my servicing down here, for the warranty. That's not true, is it?
No, and that's always been a general misdemeanor that comes out. You don't have to take a new vehicle back to the dealership for servicing to maintain warranty. As long as it's serviced by a trained and licensed mechanic, it's covered under warranty. So that's all. But dealers have always run that furphy around that goes through it. In regards to particular companies here, I wouldn't be able to give you names off the cuff because what happens is we just run the course, and wherever they come from is wherever they come from, and then out they skirt. So that would be more of a localized, you know someone that does it, so all that sort of thing. And then what that will eventually do is once everyone here starts to go to that particular mechanic, then the guy down the road goes, oh, well, shit, we better jump in on this because.
So are you getting an increase on demand?
In Darwin, no. Now, throughout the rest of Australia, yes. Huge increase in demand throughout the rest of Australia. Darwin, no. And, I think the NTs always had this cowboy element. That bugger it, we just, we'll do it sort of
Well,
thing.
the thing about the NT Darwin in particular is that there's not many people that live here.
Yeah.
Currently live here that think of it as home.
Yeah.
They're always here for 3 or 5 years and they fuck off down south.
Yeah.
And tell their friends, oh, you still live in Darwin, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's not home to many people, and that means that they're not willing to invest in photovoltaics for their roof. So that's why we've got slower uptake in all the rest of Australia.
No different to when I lived in WA in Karratha.
Yeah.
High transient environment, big wins, big losses. When the commodities drop, everything drops. So you got people that don't want to commit because they want to make money while it's there, and then they've got to tighten up the belt buckles. It's a very hard thing to push into, but it also comes down to why would they? It's like anything, How many people, and I know there is a handful of people that do it, that will go, I don't know about this, I'm going to go and pay money to learn about it. Compared to how many people that go, well, if I don't have to do it, why would I? And that's currently what we've got is until someone turns around and says, you must have this to work on electric vehicles, you're not going to have it. And that's the issue that we've got. The automotive industry has very heavily been unregulated since time was time. And that's because, in all honesty, what have we changed in a vehicle? Since the internal combustion engine was made, what have we changed? We're still injecting fuel. We've made that a little bit more efficient. We've still got to ignite it again. We've changed different ways we get it, but we're still using the same theory. Spark plug still works on a collapsing magnetic coil to spark it. So we haven't changed anything with it. We've got better technologies with it in regards to alloys and all that sort of thing, but we haven't actually done much with the internal combustion engine since it was made. So the mechanical industry has always been, we just learn how the new injection system works, or we learn how this works as they slowly come out. Now what we've done is we've yanked out the fuel tank, we've yanked out the entire drive system on it and gone, boom, there you go. No oil, no bearings, no injectors, no fuel, no lines, no, go hard, boys. And everyone goes, well,
and even better,
Jesus.
It's low voltage, so therefore it must be safe.
Yep. And you're looking at some of these batteries are getting up to 980 volts DC. Like, 22,000 amps volt current on them. Good luck, mate. Going to be left burning set of shoes at the end of it. So it's only a matter of time. And like we're seeing with every industry, it's until injuries start to come out of it is the only time things will start to get regulated. And that's just the unfortunate truth with it. Like our Nissan Leaf had issues when I first brought it. Sent it to 3 Nissan dealerships. None of them knew how to work on it. So in the end, they just said, oh, we'll just replace it. I don't know where that Leaf has gone, whether they've just pushed it off the wharf into the water or what. That's the issue. Not even the manufacturers know how to repair their own stuff because no one's told them that they have to. So the automotive industry will always go path of least resistance.
We've got people like this, the second-hand market will just get that pass, put it all together, so.
Yep. Then you got the second-hand market, which is always a good thing. You get the second-hand market involved because then that starts to force other things to move as well. But in regards to what are the requirements for a mechanic, currently there is none. There's recommendations, but
But if you want to test your battery out, with the self battery, you got to get a monitor.
Yep. So, but they're not hard to get now.
Yeah.
They're cheap. You plug them in, away you go. What the biggest issue is, and mechanics have got it. The amount of workshops I go to get phone calls is they will plug in these scan tools, and they'll bring up all these big fancy numbers, but they've got no idea what they need.
And not only that, what do they do when you look at the lights?
Yeah.
And that's when you know really got a good technician because they honestly work.
Yep.
Right?
Calculated values.
Yeah.
That's the computer making something up. I think it's
Well, it's basically only as good as the person that's
Interpreting the info.
filter. So, even if it's a software-based diagnostic system, they basically predicated it on specific failure modes, and the outcome is X. And, when you replace the same part 3 times, it's kind of like, oh, well, maybe it isn't this part. What is it? Sorry? Well, that's why you need to have, that's where it becomes, that's why people have got technicians in their name, rather than the parts replace them.
So, anyone else have any more questions?
Just one point I wanted to make when you're bit about your Nissan Leaf, and Nissan couldn't fix it. I actually had a Peugeot turbo diesel. And I had, I think near on 5 years before I actually managed to get rid of one of the bolts that I bought it with. And it had been to Peugeot so many times.
Yep.
And again, it's basically having that technical nous. When I was in Newcastle, there was a guy that had a lead that had a charge failure. So I couldn't charge off AC. Charged off DC, but the AC charger wouldn't work. And I sat down with him to read through the diagnostic trouble code and said, look, this is what they mean, this is the most likely culprit. He took it to Nissan. They came up with a list of 7 things that needed to be replaced, and it was an eye-watering sum, none of which was the actual onboard charge one. And in the end, he ended up ordering one from New Zealand second-hand and just replaced it himself and then fixed it off. And this is where it's really, really interesting because we are getting, they're very, very complex systems. Yeah. They are literally complex systems. You need to have the supporting diagnostics, logistics support behind it to make it so that you can actually get in and interrogate the computers to find out what's going on. And then you've got to have spare parts available so that you can actually, if you can't test something, and you've got testing is basically replacing modules, then you've got to have a large amount of modules available. And you don't want to be in a situation, or the customer doesn't want to be in a situation where you can get charged for everything that has been replaced just because that's how they should do it.
But you always come across that. It's a bit like, for example, Jeep with their ECUs. They make them for the vehicle on the production. They don't have spare ECUs around. And I remember 15 years ago, we came across one where we suspected the ECU had gone, but Jeep were going to charge them $32,000 for an ECU because they had to make it in the factory and ship it over because they don't have them as a stock part. And that's what we start to see with these vehicles as well. You look at the motors, for example, they're designed to do X amount of tens of thousands of hours before anything goes wrong with them. And face it, there's two bearings on them. Then, you know, what's really going to go wrong? So what happens when one does go wrong? So then the next part where you get the hesitation from the market is because these parts are more expensive, because they don't fail as often. And this is the other trade-off, because they don't fail as often, they become more expensive, then people say, I won't buy it because it's going to cost an arm and a leg to repair. And that's the next side of it as well, which only gets solved with market saturation. That's it. You just got to wait till more get on there. So that's, yeah, that's a really hard one to combat that for that reason.
Do you think all the manufacturers will eventually kind of always got to do one style of motor that would then kind of one bearing will fit multiple?
Yeah, and
they're all just going to sit.
Well, no, it's no different. Like, yeah, as you know, you work across the board, things like the Holdens used to have the Isuzu motors in them. The BT50s and the Isuzus are the same. But, yeah, so you'll start to get kilometries of vehicle manufacturers together that will say, yeah, you know, we're going to use this motor for this application, and you'll find that, you know, over 3 or 4 different models and different manufacturers, they're all running the same gear. So eventually, you will get that.
Someone makes motors is multiple manufacturers.
Well, you know, what it comes down to is things like, so Isuzu makes a motor. Yeah, and then the Holden and Mazda go, all right, we're just going to, instead of us reinventing the wheel, we'll just use your motor. Same as Ford produces motors, and then you get other manufacturers that say, well, we'll just use a Ford motor. Who cares, sort of thing. So yeah, eventually you will go down that path, and it'll be the same as batteries. You know, right now you've got Tesla and Nissan and all that, they're all making their slight different batteries, and BMWs, yeah, and different battery chemistries are the next big one. So you've got lithium ions, you've got your cobalts, you've got your, yeah, and they're all, everyone's trying to figure out, we're trying to solve this battery enigma. And that's our big thing, is we've got this real problem with batteries at the moment. How do we fit more in for less? You know, and so you've got all these companies trying to do different things. Now, every time you change a battery chemistry, you've got to change the way the computer systems work. You've got to do all this other sort of stuff. So until we've actually cracked it with the battery technology, then we'll start to see more uniformation with the electrics as well. Yeah.
I pipe in there. This is why I feel, sorry, can I pipe in?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
nice that you watch that.
Yeah, when you're talking about batteries on EVs, so I feel they are a very, very attractive offer on a novated lease, because every 5 years you shift them on. So eventually the battery is going to change.
Very true. Or you'll start to see a shift towards the American model.
Yeah.
So you could say it's very similar to a novated lease. So the American model, for example, you can buy a BMW for about 20 grand. And then you go to a battery, you know, wholesaler, whoever they are, and you basically just do a payment plan. So what they do, you know, they'll say it's going to cost you like $32 a week or whatever it is to rent the battery off. And then every 5 years you get a brand new battery, and then they strip down that battery and recommission them for home storage. Because, you know, when an EV battery loses about 20% of its capacity, it's classified as useless, but it's still 20%, yeah, 80% usable. So then what happens is it gets repurposed for homes and all that sort of thing. So you start to see companies come through with a, you know, recycling, reusable thing that solves a lot of problems. You can buy a really nice car really cheap, and for a very small amount, you can rent the battery off me, and then we'll give you a new battery, and then I'll repurpose that battery and sell it to someone else to put in their house.
Or in the interim, you could put a EV on lease, 5 years. You sell it. The company's going to buy it back. You keep doing that until the battery life gets better.
Absolutely, you could. And, you know, that's what people will end up doing. But then we start to run into the, I guess, the $64 million question that hasn't quite come up yet. Every 5 years, if I buy a new car, that car that I got rid of, more and more people don't want it because its battery's been degraded. See you later, mate. Thanks for coming. gets degraded. So then we get to a point where what do we do with all of these old vehicles that have got all of these batteries on them that no one wants?
Yeah, but it's a resolve until the battery issue is worked out. And we see it. We see because Australia is very much behind the EV market, and we see it in China, we see it in Japan, we see it the rest of Europe. 5 years they shift their cars on. So you can buy in Australia you can buy a second-hand EV very cheaply because of that very issue. But I think that until we get a resolve on the battery issue, it's going to be still going to be a very big issue here in Australia. But all I'm saying is on if you take a novated lease for 5 years, that vehicle is gone. You get into the next one, one.
And I agree with you.
And the battery life is going to change.
Yeah,
so
I agree with
eventually
you.
we're going to be to a normal vehicle where, hey, we've got to take it here, we've got to do that, we've got to do this. But until then.
Yeah, until then, that solves the problem for the immediate end user.
And there is a very big uncertainty about it. But I think the whole idea of where we are here is about educating people that it's the way we're moving forward, right? This is where we're headed. Probably in 20 years' time, we're going to be on to the next. Well, we're going to be flying in space, I reckon. But until
we still have to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
If I get a 60-litre, fuel tank of diesel and drive down the road, I convert that diesel into smoke and spit it out the back end. We all know that it's a once-use item.
Yeah.
If I get a battery, I can use it, but sooner or later, I have to do something with that battery. That battery will be useless for anything and everything because it's degraded, which that's just the way it works. The trade-off is, instead of burning it as a once-off use immediately, we're delaying its binning process until the end, where we still have to do something with it. And I know that might not be for another 15, 20 years, but we said the same thing with fossil fuels. We know this is damaging the environment. We have to do something with it. Until it became a problem, then we've decided to do something about it. So we also need to be having an honest conversation on what do we do with it? Where is it going to go? We can sit there on one aspect and go, well, we hope in 10 years technology's caught up and we can do something with it. Or we can start to put things in place to figure it out. Right now, we're kind of, when it comes to the batteries, the vehicles are fine. I like the vehicles are fine. When it comes to the batteries, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road and hoping sooner or later someone's going to figure out something to do with it.
But I think history has proven that we evolve.
Yeah, but we've only evolved because we've had to.
Yeah, so
we've backed ourselves into a corner.
I'm thinking that history has proven that we will evolve to electric. There's arguments over the whole hydro, but I think this is where we're moving. So we've got to embrace it and we've got to take it.
I don't disagree with you. We do have to embrace it.
Yeah,
but we've also got to have an honest conversation about it too.
Yeah, 100%. But it's where it's going.
Yeah,
so what do? We just stand here at a stop road, or do we move to where the world is taking us to electric, and then we embrace it, and then we go to what's headed after electric?
Well, we're always going to go to what's next, but we also have to be honest with what we're doing now. And that's, we're always going to progress forward. That's just a given.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
So
we'll,
what do you,
we've
so,
got to
so
be
then
honest
Neil,
with what we're doing now.
where do you see us headed?
Well, in regards to,
If it's not electric, where do you see us headed?
oh no, we're going to be electric because electric is,
Yeah, we have to.
well, yeah,
Electric or hydro,
at this point in time, electric is the only reliable energy source we've got. Now, how we produce that,
100%.
how we produce it and how we store it is our current issue. Going electric isn't a problem. It's the production and the storage which is the problem. And
But you live off grid.
yes, and
Yeah,
I've still
so
got a problem. So what am I going to do with them
board
batteries?
with this and you move forward with it. So why
Yeah,
can't
but
we all
I've
move
still got a
forward?
problem with what am I going to do with the batteries?
Well, it's like everything else. They end up in landfill, unfortunately.
Which means, then why are we stopping fossil fuels? If all we're going to do is throw the shit away and damage the environment anyway, why not just keep doing what we're doing?
I think it's because it's about, okay, so we go back to the Greens. You brought that in politics, right? The Greens. So landfill is a no-no and we go electric, right? Regardless, we're always going to have bloody, sorry for my language, but we're always going to have something going back into landfill.
Well, then why are we accepting that?
Because what is the answer?
And that's what I'm saying. So instead of jumping
So
from
we don't drive, we don't live, we don't whatever.
well, that's what I'm saying. Is instead of just jumping from one bad thing to another bad thing.
Well, I think we're going to a new good thing, just quietly. And
what do we do with them when they're broken? When they've come to the end of life?
Yes, but however, in saying that, things are evolving, right? In 10 years' time, batteries are going to be very different to what they are now.
They might be, they might not be. That's what I'm saying.
They might not be. But at the end of the day, I drove a 2000, what year was my Mercedes? I drove my 2018 Mercedes, right? One day I was driving down the road, Macmillan's. I looked after it, but that car has gone to landfill. Eventually, everything will. I got 25 years out of that car. So we're looking at things that are going from, we've got to look at things are changing.
Yeah, you got 25 years out of that car before it went to landfill.
I did.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and that's sweet. That's good.
And
how long are you going to get out of a battery before it goes to landfill?
well, I'm not driving an electric at the moment.
No, but yeah, we're talking about going electric. So if you're looking at 2 to 3 batteries for the average lifespan of a petrol or diesel car, then you then start looking at that other battery vehicles actually any better than the petrol or diesel car.
Oh no, people might be better than me and they'll go, look, I had that car. My car was very sentimental. So in 10 years' time, if I was driving electric, I might love it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a new battery for it.
Yeah. Now, sorry, I just stopped there. We're running down a nice little rabbit hole on theoretical and all that, which I quite like running down, but I'm seeing a few.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I'm starting to see a few rolling eyes here and people getting a bit tired. So, yeah, look, it's something I'll very much like going down the path of.
Yeah.
But
we'll talk offline.
We'll have to have a proper talk with a few drinks.
Love to, thank you.
Anyone else have anything? I think we're getting to the point where, what do you?
Yeah.
Just I'll let you know that Randall's like can't have to leave and a few others as well. Just wanted to see if anybody has any questions that I can give to Neil while you're up here. Anybody online? Anybody have any questions for? Yeah.
Hey guys,
Anybody
Dave here from Alice Springs
over there. Or Catherine.
Can you guys hear me?
What is an Easi?
Any questions there? Dave, Jasper, Hunter, Darren?
Can you guys hear me? It's
Yeah.
Dave here from Alice Springs.
Yeah, how you going, buddy?
Good, mate. Good. Look, I've got I guess it's off topic question, but it's got to do with it's come up in conversation with mate about the Australian road users tax. I know Victoria tried to bring it in, and I think drive.com did a article about the feds trying to bring it in. Do you have any information about that? And is that something to worry about, or?
It's one of those things that eventually will be yes. Information about it, everything's come to a standstill because they're trying to encourage the uptake of electric vehicles. Now, the reason why the Victorians got in trouble for it is because it was a tax and only federal's allowed to impose a tax. So that's where the state government got in trouble for it, which is why it fell over. So right now there's nothing in the talks, but you've only got to look at the numbers. Yeah, how many billions does a fuel tax cause in revenue? If we're going to lose that tax, it's got to be paid for somewhere. So they might do it one of two ways, which is they put in like per kilometre tax. So places like New South Wales, where we have to get an inspection done every year before we renew, they will then tax us on the Ks that we drove that year, or they will hide the tax somewhere else. Either way, to be perfectly honest, you cannot remove tens of billions of dollars from the economy and expect the government not to try and recoup it somewhere.
Yes, spot on. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I suspected too, that the tax has to come from somewhere. Basically, roads have to be taken care of, that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, exactly. So right now there's nothing because electric vehicles don't make up enough of a market in the in the industry to be too concerned about. And also because they're trying to encourage the uptake. But you're 100% correct. It's one of those future things that sooner or later, something's going to come into play because they'll have to make that money back.
Yeah, I was going to say the correlation federal government was talking about bringing it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't get elected, so.
That's correct. And that's because at this point in time, it's just not a big topic. So no one's really overly concerned with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a good question to bring up. Sooner or later, it will come in. Yeah.
Excellent. Anybody got any further questions they want to ask? All good. So I'll just conclude the meeting now. So thanks for everybody for joining today. And yeah, we'll just hopefully we can look at the BYD store with Sam Moyes. I'd like to thank you, Neil, for inviting us today and hosting us as well. We really appreciate that going forward, and hopefully we can have another discussion. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and maybe if we can talk about solar power one day going forward and that sort of stuff. And,
yeah, well, as we start to progress forward, we can start to implement a few things as well.
Yeah, that's right. And you guys have a lot of discussions with like Power and Water or with
So no, we're on board with Power and Water when they make changes to legislation, but we don't. We're not on any of their boards to influence them. We are with Queensland and New South Wales.
Yep.
Yeah. So we are on their board, so we know what's changing, but we're not making it active.
Yeah. So they're not reaching out to you guys and asking for.
At this point in time, no. About 4 years ago, they had a general push.
Yep.
And then they kind of just let us sit there, and I think that came down more towards there was just not enough interest in it. Yeah, but now so the licensing board and Power and Water have also now changed their roles and removed a couple of roles, so you might find a bit more interest comes. Yeah, because they've actually diversified a bit more.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's great. Because most of the time they do their people's groups and working groups and that sort of stuff and that sort of vein. But I feel like they're very frustrating because they're not bringing the right people to hear the discussions. So they bring a group. I put my hand up for it, but they don't let me go to the next stages and go forward.
We come across the same thing with them. Yeah. Basically, unless you're talking their tune, they won't put you on the board. Yeah,
exactly.
So until they change that attitude.
Yeah. And the whole idea is just trying to just negotiate with them, feel what's going on. You know, like, we want to see curbside charging. We want to see things happening. You know.
Yeah, a lot of things like your curbside charging and all that, rally your councils,
Yep.
not power and water.
Not power and water, yeah.
Yeah, because power and water, regardless, they don't have any say over what the councils can or can't do.
Yeah.
So if you start to then get the councils going to power and water, saying, hey, we want to put these curbside charges in, can we do it?
Yep.
And then that forces power and water to then do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going to power and water for charging isn't the way. Go to councils for charging, and then they put the pressure on power and water.
Yep. Excellent. Another quick question I had was like, people want to see like more faster chargers, like they get 50 kilowatt chargers, but they've asked me, can we get like 80 kilowatt chargers or 120 kilowatt chargers, or, you know, or what Zeekers are doing at 800 kilometer volts, you know, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, fast charging is a real tough one. Like you look at one 60 kilowatt fast charger, that's 10 houses worth of power that you get.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of energy that's required for. So you know, you might find for new or fledgling in particular, like the NT, going for something like your 7 kilowatt, 21 kilowatt chargers. They take longer, but they're cheaper to put in. They're easier for power and water to be able to, you know, accommodate. And then as the interest grows, then they go towards the larger power sources. Yeah. So unfortunately, you've got to start small.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I think we missed an opportunity with battery swapping. Yep. Because, you know, it wouldn't matter about the charge rate. Yeah. What, you know, 10 amps, who cares? And just when it's flat, 30 seconds, take one out, stick another one in.
Well, Europe does it already with the trucks.
So does Australia. And I've just bought my, my retail shares in Jones Electric.
Yeah, so the prime movers pull up, they pull the battery out, they put the battery charge, throwing in money.
Yeah, much better. And it's future proof as well. So as the battery technology changes, so does the battery pack.
Yeah, which I not knowing enough about it, I can see how it's easy for the heavy industry. I think, the light industry gets a bit, it'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
Excellent. Lovely. All right, guys, thanks very much for tuning in today, and I appreciate your time, everybody. And on a Friday as well, so I appreciate that. I'll catch you all later. Thanks very much, Neil, for the presentation.
Guys, thanks.
Thank you.
Catch you later.